Welcome back to Focus Today, and boy, I've been waiting to do this interview, looking forward to it, and we are delighted to have with us today Ed Martin. He has been the president of Eagle Forum since January of 2015, previously served as the chairman of the state of Missouri's Republican Party, and of course the member of the RNC, chief of staff for Missouri Governor Matt Blunt, and he's a co-author with the late Phyllis Schlafly on a book entitled The Conservative Case for Trump. First of all, Ed, good to see you, my friend. When were you chairman of Missouri?
Thank you, Perry. Good to be with you. I was chairman of Missouri, elected in January of 2013, and served into the 2015. So about 2.5 years, a couple years ago. I was on there in the run-up to this election. One of the things I had a really helpful perspective, I think, was seeing how the process was laid out. In fact, some of the issues that came about were ones that we had been fighting about when I was on there.
I was chairman of Oregon 99 through 2003, and that was during the beginning of Bush W. Bush election cycle, and I had an incredible honor. Didn't know at the time, Ed, how much of an honor this was, but I sat between Phyllis Schlafly and Henry Hyde on the platform committee that fought to keep the pro-life plank into the platform. Had no idea that I was sitting between two giants at the time, and went on, and I am a past recipient of the Eagle Award, so I want to say thank you. And first of all and foremost, our deepest condolences of the passing of Phyllis Schlafly.
Well, thank you, Perry, and that's incredible. That those two in the pro-life movement, Henry Hyde was someone Phyllis revered and had so many good stories about their efforts together. And Perry, I might have to kind of talk about a different book and make sure to send you a copy. We published in the Midwest with a regional publisher, because we wanted to do it quickly, a book that Phyllis wrote over about 1.5 years ago. We published it only 6 months ago, called "How the Republican Party Became Pro-Life," and it's a recount year by year, convention by convention, about how Republican activists like Phyllis and Henry Hyde put the pro-life plank in the platform, and they transformed the Republican Party. People don't realize after Roe v. Wade, President Nixon and his wife, President Ford and his wife, Senator Dole, they all quickly said, well, if we're going to be a successful national party, we have to be pro-abortion. You know, people want this. It's the law of the land and all that. And Phyllis opposed it. And I'll tell you, you know, it was one of the proudest things that she had done, was that effort. It also showed that you can move the Republican Party, or any party, to a position with hard work and smarts. And Phyllis really believed in the Republican Party because of that. Let me tell you one quick story about that. I was at the convention with Phyllis this year, and we were the platform committee. Phyllis was a delegate to the convention, not on the platform, but we were still working it. And a reporter from McClatchy came up to me and he said, "Hey, Ed, you're with Phyllis." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Well, you know, in 1980, when I met Phyllis, they were fighting about whether the Republican Party should be pro-life or pro-choice." Those are his words, of course, pro-life and pro-choice. He said, now they're in there fighting about whether to use the word unborn or preborn. I think you guys won this one. And it was very satisfying to know that one of our major parties, at least on its planks and its roots, is pro-life.
Oh, it's just amazing, because out of those meetings, of course, came the Hyde Amendment.
Right.
And I'll never forget, I was sitting next to Phyllis, and you know the procedure. You've been a chairman, so you know the procedure, and you know when there's a nomination and then an amendment. You know those Roberts rules. And she leans over to me, she said, "Perry, I'm going to make the nomination, and right after I do, I want you to stand up and give this amendment." It was a double truck, and it worked.
Yeah, I think, Perry, as someone who is chairman, I mean, there's a certain amount of preparation on policy and principles and all, but when you do politics, you also got to know the game, right? And one of the things that Phyllis really loved, she always loved to use the phrase, "Politics is where the action is," and she knew it was action. And in 1952, she went to her first convention. Had been to every convention until this 2016. It's an extraordinary longevity of attendance, but it's also, if you look at it, she was playing the game. She understood that you got to move the ball, make progress, and she was a wonderful lady.
Well, we miss her and we'll miss her. Well, listen, she early on, as you well know, Ed, she early on came out for Trump at the cost of great criticism from other conservatives. What was in her that she saw that Trump could be trusted as a conservative?
Yeah, so there's two important details, Perry, on this that I want to tell people. One is when Trump decided to run, from the very first speech he made when he came down that escalator, Phyllis began to write. You know, when history writes the kind of book on Phyllis, she will be revered for lots of successes, but I believe she'll be revered as one of the greatest writers, especially on politics and history, America's ever seen. She told me the story once when she was 14. She had a teacher who made her write a paragraph every day. And Phyllis said it became a habit. She never stopped writing. And even to her death, she was working on a column down the stretch. You know, at the end, she was not typing and she was talking, though, and she was sort of dictating. So she's a writer. And what with Trump, she started to write about him. And she wrote in June and July of last year, in August. And she started to take apart what he said and watch him and all. And, you know, she didn't endorse him until March, although in December, she said some things that were so glowing about his positions and how he was operating that really kind of made people think she'd endorsed him. And he was, you know, this weekend, Phyllis's funeral took place, and Trump and his wife flew in for it. And Trump gave a short speech, a short comment before, just 2 or 3 minutes, some ways very tender comments and very apropos for a funeral. But what Phyllis saw, Perry, was on positions and on personality and on political skills, Trump had something special. And in the book, The Conservative Case for Trump, there's only 10 chapters. They're typical Phyllis. It's very succinct, very straightforward. But if you look at the chapters, the 1 and 2, the first and second chapter, are immigration and trade deals. And in a way that I think will surprise some of your readers, as a conservative, she argued that Trump's positions on immigration and trade are so important for American sovereignty at this moment in history that he really has been a transformative leader already, and that's why as president. And there's other things, judges, and how you would look at some of the political correctness that in the book we talk about. But those two issues really caught her eye. She'd been writing about immigration and trade for 25 years, and the Republican Party was moving away from her. And Trump brought it back in a way that was extraordinary. So that was the central thing. And then, you know, with 70 years of experience in public life, she grew to believe in him and to trust him. And I tell people, you know, maybe Phyllis is wrong after 70 years, but she's got a pretty good track record. I think I'll stick with her on this one, too.
Very interesting, because I know she took some flack, but it's interesting she looked at it from that point of view, Ed, because what she was looking at is the big picture of keeping America strong. And I think more people were looking to the normal the normal indicates of whether or not he was a conservative, because he was all over the place there for a while, but she saw something that nobody else saw.
Yeah. Well, and let me tell you, the way to look at it historically in Phyllis's judgment, which I hope she's trained me to think and all of us to be better. But when Ronald Reagan was running in 78, 79, Phyllis said there was a lot of concern still, even though they loved him challenging Ford in 76. And the concern was that Reagan as governor had signed a very pro-abortion bill. Reagan as governor had signed really the most destructive no-fault divorce law ever, and it became the law of the land because California led. There were people that didn't trust Nancy's conservatism or lack thereof. But on the big question, Phyllis told me, she knew that Reagan understood that communism was evil because he'd seen it up close when he was in Hollywood. And she said he knew the Soviet Union was therefore the evil empire. And that, after Carter was so feckless that the country, we were going to lose the Cold War. And so Reagan let her down on judges, actually, on amnesty for illegals, but on the fundamental issue that needed to be addressed, he was a man for the job. And she also said he was a strong guy, he was a tough guy, he was macho. And with Trump, on the question of American sovereignty, now let me tell you a story. I know it's fun to tell these stories because it's I think they're so interesting slices. When Phyllis met Trump on March 11th, private meeting right before she endorsed him. She had decided to endorse him. We were at the Peabody Opera House in St. Louis before a rally. Phyllis brought a copy of the 2012 platform, and she said to him, "This is a great platform. I need you to help me." She said, "I've spent 50 years working to make this a great platform. I need you to help me do it. Keep it strong." He said he would. And by the way, at the 2016 convention, his people really helped. 2016 is an even better platform than 2012. So he lived up to that. But the next part of the conversation may be important for your listeners to hear, how she hones in on both what's important and what is possible in a short conversation with a leader. she said to him, just a few weeks before Scalia had died, and she said to him, I need you to promise me you'll appoint judges and justices like Scalia. And he said, I will. And over the next 3 weeks, he spoke about Scalia. He put out a list of judges a little bit later, I think, that included names that we had mentioned to him.
Right.
And that kind of influence is what Phyllis recognized you have to do. You have to be right, but you also have to persuade.
All right, let me take a quick break here, Ed. We'll come back because since the book has come out and where we are now in the election cycle, there was a big divide in the Republican Party. A lot of people didn't like Trump, still don't like Trump, but more and more are now coming to him. And I want you to comment on that when we come back. We're talking to Ed Martin. He's one of the co-authors of the book entitled The Conservative Case for Trump, authored by himself, Brett Decker, and the late Phyllis Schlafly. And the book is now available. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina, and I work at theDove TV. Did you know that when you support theDove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
All right, but welcome back to Focus Today, and delighted to have with us today Ed Martin. He is, well, he's now been the president of Eagle Forum since January 2015, and believe me, Eagle Forum is one of the most incredible conservative organizations in the country. You can go to eagleforum.org, and I recommend that you do that, and it's an incredible resource there for you, and join and support what they do. He's also the co-author of a book entitled The Conservative Case for Trump. There's a picture there on the screen, co-authored with the late Phyllis Schlafly, and of course Ed himself and Brett Decker, and let me encourage you to check it out. It does deal with 10 points about Donald Trump's positions: immigration, invasion, rotten trade deals, political correctness kills, the restraining judicial activism, education that educates, a family man, and it goes on all kinds of things, military superiority. The book kind of nails all of the key issues. All right, here's the question, Ed. Trump has struck a chord with the American people, but not with the Republican establishment. Your thoughts?
Well, I thought you were going to ask me a different question. I'm even more interested in my friends that are great evangelical Christians, pals of mine that are are uncomfortable with Trump.
I'm going to come to that.
Okay, we'll come to that. Look, you and I both know the Republican Party is our party. You know, Phyllis used to say, I'd love it when she'd say it. She said, if you want a third party, fourth party, fifth party, go to Europe. There's lots of parties. Here we're a two-party system, and we are where we are. But I think the establishment in our Republican Party deserves a good challenge. I mean, I think that what happened in '64 with the Goldwater and became the conservative movement was the rejection of the Eastern establishment that was trying to continue to dominate. We had a conservative revolution. It's centered around Reagan. But in the last 25 years, we've had a sort of consulting class, a Republican establishment dominated by people with a globalist vision that have sort of taken over the party. And when they reject, Phyllis's PS report, the Phyllis Schlafly report, Phyllis began writing monthly in 1967, August. And the August of 2016, we began the 50th year. In the last one that she worked on, she wrote about all those guys that signed up and saying Trump's comments on NATO were so bad and so troubling. Phyllis wrote about how she's been critiquing NATO, not because we don't want alliances, but because NATO has had members that are not carrying their freight. In fact, they're not even not carrying their freight, they're abusing America. And so what we have, though, is the establishment saying, wait, we've got a political industrial class that we like the power centralized in the hands of the top of the two-party, and they are upset with Trump. He threatens the sort of gravy train in a way that is really problematic to them, and I think that's a good sign. We needed a party shift. We're getting it. Now what we need is our members to continue to hold the leadership, Trump and others, accountable to our values, to our Judeo-Christian values informing our politics.
All right, let's go there. Let's go to the faith community that has been very reluctant to embrace him, but he has reached out. He's brought all of these ministers to New York. They had that incredible meeting. He turns around. He selects Mike Pence, who said he's a Christian before he's a Republican. I mean, he's done more to reach to the faith community that will ever come from the left. But there are still some dragging their feet. What do you say?
Well, I think, look, one of the reasons we wrote the book, and we wrote it the way we did, was aimed at the people that Phyllis knew listened to her, reliably, which is conservatives. And so I think we do acknowledge the concern. But I think, you have to judge people on their actions. I mean, we want more people to change their mind on abortion. We want that. And so when Trump's comments on abortion, I found them very powerful. He had an experience of someone who, whether it was a boy or a girl, was going to be aborted. And that child is now big and older, and he's impressed. That's a good change, right? And then we got to look at actions. Who are the judges he's listed that he would appoint? Who's around him? Ben Carson, Jeff Sessions, people around him. So conservatives also have to go back to, though, we have to make a choice. And I want to give them ammo to say why they're for Trump. I think we have a guy that has been a little bit more humble. A month ago, he talked about being sorry for some, or apologizing for some things he said. And then I think what you said is so important. We haven't had a leader go into the well of an African-American church and say to African Americans, hey, let me, and you know this, Perry, you and I both, we've been to places where it's new for us, right? I'm an Irish Catholic kid. I go into a black church the first time, and I've done this, and people lay their hands on you and they pray in a way, even in tongues. It's a powerful experience, but you have to have a certain confidence in yourself. And when Trump stands in the well of an African American church and a bishop lays his hands on and puts a Jewish shawl around his shoulders and prays, and he looks comfortable and adjusted, you say, hey, he's trying in a way we want our leaders to try, not just count their votes, not just say it's, and same thing with evangelicals and conservative Christians. He's trying to communicate. The Johnson Amendment, very smart move to say to pastors. Most pastors are working so hard to do well, to build their little churches. The threat to them that's most obvious, besides the culture, is the IRS and others. So there's a lot of things I think Trump is doing to reach out.
Well, he made religious freedom a big issue, and I applaud him for that. I am a little stunned, and I don't know quite how to ask this question, Ed, so forgive me if it kind of comes out sloppy, but I am really disappointed that the so-called evangelical Christian candidate in this race hasn't come around and endorsed Trump. And I'm talking about Ted Cruz and his performance at the convention. I'm very disappointed. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, I am too, and I know Phyllis was. I mean, look, Phyllis would have told you if she was doing this interview, Perry, and I think you as a party chairman, me as a party chairman, if you sign on to work in this area, politics, it's going to be times where you back a candidate that's not your first choice. Phyllis didn't think Romney was her first choice. She backed him 100%. McCain, same thing. There's a point here where the process has to allow us to keep working together in good faith with honor. And I've never seen anything like Cruz's speech. I thought he should have finished his speech by saying, this very hard process, but I'm going to vote for Trump, and I think you should too. It's very disappointing. And the thing that it's also showing, though, is there is a set of the class in politics that think that the details and the rules only apply to others. Lindsey Graham has said he can't back Trump. I have a friend that had helped Lindsey Graham run for office. My friend said to him, "You made me support all these kind of moderates that I didn't like, for president, and now you won't support Trump." And Graham said, "It's a matter of principle now." And my friend thought, what principle is it? How is it that you get to tell us that we can be stuck with Hillary Clinton for 4 years or 8 years or whatever? So I think Senator Cruz, I hope he will soon endorse Trump and change the dynamic for him, because he's a very talented man, and we need leaders who are tough like he is. But it was a bitter disappointment. I think it was a mistake.
Donald Trump has said to faith leaders that he wants to protect what they say in the pulpit so they can say anything that they want in the pulpit, which not only goes to religious freedom, but certainly goes to First Amendment. We Christian broadcasters now are faced with whether or not the fairness doctrine is going to come back, and whether or not all of those regulations that would restrict the First Amendment come over the top of us. At least Donald Trump has said, no, I'm a defender of the First Amendment. Do you think he really is?
Well, let me make one comment about his faith. I think I was fascinated by this because I'm a fan of Norman Vincent Peale, the great famous writer who was also a pastor at Presbyterian Church in New York. And Trump grew up with him. He was his pastor in that church. And so there's a certain strain of Presbyterians. It reminds me of sort of my grandpa. They are less sort of overtly Christian in ways that I am and maybe you are. They're just kind of, and so I think that's important to know. He was formed in that way. Look, I think there's two answers. One, I believe him when he says he is for religious freedom. I believe him when he talks about the Johnson Amendment. But let me put it differently for you. This is the second point. You read the book, you talk about, one of the chapters is on the red tape, the bureaucracy. Trump, as president, we can dream of a day when the federal government is dramatically reduced in size and scope, and we ought to start on that trend line next January. But it's going to take a while. And in the interim, President Trump is going to appoint the commissioners to the FCC. He's going to appoint the Department of Justice lawyers that are going to look at these things. He's going to appoint a head of the IRS. And the people who are appointed, the reason it's so important to have an executive who shares the values and maybe who talks about the candidates and the leaders for cabinet posts who would fulfill those, it's so important. So, in the coming 4 to 8 years, we're going to have people in there who are not antagonistic to our values, as a starting point. They may be slightly more even-handed and not necessarily advocates of just sort of using government in the favor one, but as you point out, so that's a huge factor. So I do believe him. I believe in his faith relationship. I do believe he will respect religious freedom from what he said, but I also think he's going to appoint a lot of people. People he's talking about for cabinet posts and stuff. It's exciting.
Well, boy, do we need a new chairman of the FCC.
Oh, man, that's right. Exactly.
All right. In the minute or so that I have left, Ed, tell us what you want people to get from this book.
Well, I want people to get armed with some ammo to go out and make the argument for Donald Trump. Phyllis especially was someone who liked to talk about what she was for, not what other people, or especially why to be against Hillary. So you read this book, 10 chapters, pretty short read. Get ammo. I gave it to a cop at the church at Phyllis's funeral. He read it over the weekend. He said to me, it's very helpful. Get armed to be able to say why you're for Trump. It's such an important election. We need to have President Trump, and we need to make sure that every one of us votes for him.
It's called The Conservative Case for Trump. And there's a picture of it on the screen. Check it out at the bookstores. It's put out by Rigneri Press and co-authored by Ed Martin, who we're talking to, the late Phyllis Schlafly, and Brett Decker. All right, the 1 minute, 40 seconds I have left, Eagle Forum. Yeah. Why should people go to your website and join?
Well, eagleforum.org, and you can email me directly, ed@eagleforum.org. I would say the biggest reason is Phyllis Schlafly. If you go read what she's written, what she's about, she's someone that can inspire you, educate you. She was very, very capable at touching the average person, talking to us in ways that work. So that's the reason.
Ed, you're a delight, friend. Let's connect again, okay?
Thank you, Perry. I'd like that.
Yeah, and keep up the good work. Again, go to eagleforum.org. That is the website. Check out the book, The Conservative Case for Trump. I'm sure it's available at Amazon, at the bookstores. And when you go to Eagle Forum, join, support what they do. One of the great conservative organizations throughout the country. Ed, let's stay in touch, see what happens over the next, 51 days or something like that.
It's coming quick. Thank you, Perry.
Right,
God bless you.
You too, friend. All right, we'll see you next time on Focus Today.